Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for Truth show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard, you don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart, yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome back to A Time for Truth show. It's a pleasure to be back with you again tonight. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. And tonight we're going to talk about the epidemic we're facing, the crisis of addiction, of isolation, and the science of human connection. We're going to get right to it. We have so much to cover because in recent years, the United States of America has faced two public health crises unfolding at the same time. A devastating epidemic of drug addiction and a growing crisis of loneliness and social isolation. These problems are often discussed separately, but science now tells us that's not correct. They're deeply connected. Addiction does not arise in isolation, and loneliness is not a minor emotional inconvenience. Together they form a reinforcing cycle that damages mental health, physical health, families, and entire communities. Recent public statements by the Secretary of Health and Human Resources, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., have emphasized something extremely important. Addiction should not be understood only as a chemical dependence or moral failure. No. Instead, it is deeply rooted in trauma, social breakdown, and the loss of meaningful human connection, things that really matter. Our friendships, our family connection, our communities. This is not an ideology or a philosophy, it's a science. For decades, researchers have observed that addiction thrives most powerfully, not where drugs are present, but where meaning, belonging, and stability are absent. And I'm going to play a video for you now, and engineer, if you will, let's put on the video of Secretary Kennedy speaking.
We have to figure out ways to reconnect, particularly our children, with community. Addiction is about isolation. It's a disease of isolation. Faith-based initiatives work, and they are scientifically proven to work. They do that by reconnecting us to our community, by expanding the relationships that the addict has. God talks to human beings through many vectors, through organized religions, through the great books of those religions, through wise people and the prophets and through nature, but nowhere with such texture and grace and joy as through other human beings. And when we cut off our relationships with other human beings, we lose that access to the divine. And that is a healing power. We are in a spiritual malaise in this country. And we need to give people access to all different ways of reconnecting with something that is higher than themselves.
Powerful words. In scientific studies by Bruce Alexander and spiritual investigations by Ron Hubbard demonstrated that social disconnection, the loss of community, loss of purpose, and loss of who we are, our identity, is a primary driver of addictive behavior. Research by Nina Christie further shows that social isolation is biologically and psychologically linked to opioid addiction. And studies by Mawson reveal that strong social identity and networks, often absent in isolated individuals, are critical pathways out of addiction, indicating that the lack of these connections contribute to the development and persistence of substance use disorders. And why did I mention so many different leaders, researchers, doctors, scientists, philosophers, investigators? Because they all conclude the same. And probably intuitively you all felt the same. But it's time that we act. When people are cut off from stable relationships and meaningful roles, a purpose in their life, substances often become substitutes for that void. Not pleasure, but relief from their anxiety, from their depression, from their apathy. Modern addiction research confirms this, but we intuitively knew this. Chronic stress, trauma, social deprivation strongly predict substance misuse and further relapse. Science and spirituality merge on why this happens. Human beings are naturally social beings, spiritual beings. The Webster Dictionary of a human being. What Hubbard has mentioned, what Buddha spoke about, what all the great religions fought for, man's spirituality and belief in a higher entity and purpose. The same stimuli that regulate motivation and reward the hormones that come out naturally in our bodies are activated by positive behavior, social bonding, trust, and belonging, togetherness. Dopamine is not just released as a drug, it's released because there's positive activity occurring for that human being. He feels an affinity for the people around him, an agreement, and he's in conversation and rapport with those people. That's what we find at weddings, at Thanksgiving, at all joyous occasions. When those natural rewards disappear, the person becomes vulnerable. Vulnerable to drug seeking, to artificial stimulation as a substitute through substances. This is what our country is suffering from. Social isolation also disrupts the body's stress response. It raises cortisol, which causes a myriad of problems: obesity, stress, difficulty physiologically. It impairs sleep. It weakens your control. These are exactly the conditions that increase addiction risk. One goes with the other. Either we're going up or we're going down. Down to drugs or up to happiness and future and flourishing. Research on oxytocin, the hormone central to bonding, they call the love hormone, shows that weakened attachment reduces the emotional resilience and increases compulsive behavior. Is it really a mental problem, or is it a lack of human interaction? Very interesting things that Senator Kennedy, the secretary is bringing out. Even more striking, recent studies show that loneliness, similar to hunger or thirst, is a signal that we all seek to survive. None of us wants to disappear or die. And we all, as we survive, react physiologically, emotionally, and mentally when we start going in the wrong direction and start succumbing. This scientific understanding closely parallels the warning issued by the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, who formally declared loneliness and social isolation a public health epidemic. He warned that chronic isolation carries health risks comparable to smoking, to obesity and diabetes, and to physical inactivity. Large studies confirm this. People who are socially isolated face higher risks of heart disease, depression, cognitive decline, and premature death. Importantly, loneliness is not simply a personal failing or an individual emotion. No. It's a societal condition driven by our fragmented communities. The lack of just saying hello to someone. The weakened family structures we're experiencing, the increased divorce rates, the lack of parents in the house, the economic instability and stresses, and the declining civic engagement as we all suffer and lose our desire to improve, to help each other. Systematic research shows strong links between loneliness, mental and emotional disorders, and substance abuse, misuse, and suicide. Addiction and loneliness reinforce each other. Isolation increases vulnerability to substance use. Addiction breaks understanding and relationships, causes loss of awareness, and increases withdrawal from life. A vicious cycle. Long-term studies show that recovery outcomes depend heavily on social support. People with strong social contact and communication recover more quickly, more successfully, more permanently. Those without them struggle longer and relapse much more often. This helps explain why many policy responses fail. Because this is not about policy. This is not about bureaucracy. This is not about some kind of organization. It's about humanity. It's about our communities. It's about life. We focus on substances, but ignore the necessity of community and family interaction. We restrict supply, but neglect the emotional bonds, support. We treat chemistry, but overlook our human need, our emotions, our instincts, our perceptions, our intuitions. Public health research shows that social conditions such as housing, education, employment or lack of, and community cohesion or violence shape health outcomes more than clinical care alone. The hopeful truth is this: the same science that explains the problem also points to the solutions. We just have to be willing to look and see what we see. And what do we see? That we need to communicate one with the other, not by cell phone, but in person live. That we need to share affinity and liking and brotherhood and humanity and those feelings with each other. That we need to find common realities and not just seek war and conflict, but commonalities, because they're not optional. They're as vital as an antibiotic, penicillin, would be for a runaway infection. Social awareness, my friends and mentors, and all of my fellow viewers, are paramount. Those friends and mutual help groups and collaboration with others reduce relapse and improve emotional and mental well-being. For young people especially, for our future, strong family bonds and positive peer networks dramatically reduce substance use risks. Healthcare systems are beginning to respond, and social isolation is finally now being recognized as a clinical risk factor. Being part of a family, a group that generates bonding, trust, and human connection are now realized essential to every program's success. Ultimately, the message from science, spirituality, and public health point to the importance of commonly shared values that foster positive purpose and true happiness. These are unmistakable requirements for any future wellness, prosperity, and for a society that should be flourishing into the future. And now, I want to play you another very important video. This one from the former Surgeon General that I mentioned, Dr. Vivek Murthy. Engineer, let's put on that video, please.
The U.S. Surgeon General today declared a new public health epidemic in America: loneliness. A new report from his office finds loneliness can have profound effects on mental health as well as heart disease, stroke, and dementia. It tracks a decline in social connections and links all of this to billions of dollars in healthcare costs. Dr. Vivek Murthy is the U.S. Surgeon General, and he joins me now. Dr. Murthy, welcome back to the NewsHour. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Amna, for having me.
So your declaration and this report very clearly link loneliness to matters of life or death, to put it plainly. This one number stuck out to me. It found social isolation increases the risk of premature mortality by nearly 30%. How and why did you come to focus on this topic?
Well, Amna, I had certainly had firsthand experience with loneliness in my own life and also in my care of patients, where I found so often people come into the hospital for one condition or another, but there was loneliness lurking in the background. But it was only when I began my tenure as Surgeon General that I started to realize, in talking to people across the country, that loneliness was extraordinarily common. In fact, we are now finding that 1 in 2 adults report measurable levels of loneliness, and it turns out that young people are most affected than any other group. And here's why this is so concerning. It's because we've realized that loneliness is more than just a bad feeling. It has real consequences for our mental and physical health. It increases our risk of depression, anxiety, and suicide. But social disconnection also raises the risk of heart disease and dementia and premature death on levels on par with smoking daily, and even greater than the risks that we see associated with obesity. So however you look at it, loneliness and isolation are public health concerns that we have to prioritize.
And there you go. So we have two very important statements from leaders of our country, those in charge of the science and the medical care of our country, urging us to realize that our humanity and our spirituality are linked and not separate entities. For so many years, we talked about bedside manner and how patients seem to heal better with certain doctors who had that bedside manner. There was a beautiful show when I was very young called Marcus Welby, MD. And Marcus Welby, MD had that bedside manner. He was more than just a doctor physically. He was a doctor emotionally into his community in that show. It was a very interesting show when I grew up watching that. And as a doctor of 45 years now in the New York City area, I've always seen how when that relationship and that bond and that agreement is formed with my patient, how much better they've done. And for me personally, how much easier it's been for me when I started something new to learn that if the person teaching me taught me with respect, with honor, with patience, with humanity. Addiction is not simply a chemical problem. It's a symptom of what this show is bringing out and eliciting. This is a cry for our world that has tremendous technology and needs to have tremendous humanity. Loneliness is not simply an emotional consequence. Loneliness is something that occurs as a result and a consequence of what's going on in our world, where artificial intelligence, although wonderful in the time that it saves, is removing positions and jobs and occupations and purposes for many people who are left void of any reason for living. They are intertwined expressions of our underlying need for social interaction. As we grow into our technology and the future that it brings, we need to incorporate how to deal with the purpose and future that we need to create as a human race. People are not numbers. When the human dynamic interaction and communication disappear, life disappears, conflict occurs, war occurs, wrong buttons get pushed, and with the power of planes that now go at Mach 8, 9, and the bombs and the satellites in space, we need to come to a realization that this show is a call to awaken. When artificial means enter, hope begins to fade. Loneliness rises as we lose touch with one another and dive into cell phones and computers. And drug misuse increases. And addiction ensues because the cause is never dealt with. When belonging, affinity, and agreement and connection are restored, life and understanding is restored. Recovery becomes possible because as human beings, we feel validated because we feel that warmth. We feel that connection that we all strive to have. That very connection preserves social collaboration. And when you look at the tremendous accomplishments in the last 50 years and the acceleration of the pace of humanity, that's wonderful that we have so much control over the physical aspect of our lives. Let's accelerate our spiritual and emotional energies, abilities, potentialities as well. Humanity provides a spiritual energy that not only saves lives, but the future of our blue planet, in which direction it will go, because the human beings will determine that. Not metaphorically, not philosophically, but as a scientific actuality, as this show has brought out to you. The conclusion: man is a spiritual, connected being. We sense each other. We have deja vu. We walk into a room and feel we've been there before. And man measurably lives well when he's interconnected socially. He creates future when hope, humanity, and a higher purpose are evident. I hope you've enjoyed this program. This is not the end of the program, but the beginning of a new era. I urge you to take on this purpose, and let's look back at 2026 as the year where the spiritual malaise that Secretary Kennedy spoke about so aptly disappeared from the world. The darkness and the clouds went away. The flowers sprung up and the music started playing. And the humanity found their happiness, their future. Thank you so much for being there, for watching, and for what you're going to do. Be well.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet